Sometimes history can look chaotic. A series of random events, random people with no payoff, no narrative structure. It's normal. It's real life after all, not something someone decided to write down for entertainment, even if of course someone wrote it down if you know about it. But sometimes history is just perfect. The beginning of the story connecting and echoing in the end. One of these cases is the birth and the death of the Roman Republic. In both cases, we have a man ready to betray someone else in order to do what is right. In both cases, this man is called Brutus. And the two Brutus are even connected by family, even if by adoption. Can't have everything perfect, right? This is the story of Lucius Junius Brutus, one of the first consuls of Rome, the breaker of the Roman monarchy, the personification, in the eyes of the Romans themselves, of what a Roman should be. It was the twilight of Rome's monarchy. In a court where a word could mean death, there was one man who survived by becoming a ghost in plain sight. Brutus played the fool. He wasn't born stupid, he was born into one of Rome's most powerful families. His uncle was none other than Tarquinius Superbus, the last king of Rome. His brother executed. His father also executed, murdered by the king in a wave of paranoia. Brutus should have followed them, but he survived because he became what his name implied, Brutus, the dullard. In order for the king to underestimate him, to not consider him a threat, he drooled at banquets, he stammered at court, he let the royal children laugh at him and call him an idiot. He even submitted to mockery by Sextus Tarquinius, the king's venomous son and heir. But Brutus was no fool. He was waiting. When the king sent him to consult the oracle of Delphi, Brutus was chosen because no one thought him capable of subterfuge. But the answer he received burned itself into legend. The priest told the envoy, "He who shall first kiss his mother shall hold sway in Rome." Sextus was a part of a larger delegation, and so they all debated, everyone ready to rush home and embrace their literal mothers. Brutus, he stumbled, fell to the ground and kissed the earth, Mother Earth. He said nothing. He was still the idiot, but in that moment Brutus knew he could be king. The prophecy was clear, but the choice about kingly ambition or something else was his and his alone. We are at the end of the 6th century BC. Rome is still just a city-state, and Tarquinius, the king, is an Etruscan. He is not a Latin, he is not directly part of the bloodline of Rome. The Etruscan dynasty had controlled the city for a while. We have a whole video about the birth of Rome, so I will not bore you with the details. I'll put a card up if you wanna take a look. What matters is that while everyone hated Tarquinius, the king, his son was much worse. Sextus Tarquinius, drunk on impunity, forced himself upon Lucrezia, the wife of Brutus' cousin, Collatinus. She was the model Roman matron, chaste, dignified, and loyal. When she summoned her family and confessed the violation, she drew a dagger and plunged it into her own heart. She bled out in front of them. In the midst of this tragedy, Brutus stepped forward, the fool gone. He pulled the knife from Lucrezia's body, lifted high, and said, "By this blood most pure, before the outrage wrought by the king's son, I swear, and you gods, I call to witness, I will drive out Tarquin the Proud and his impious family, and never again shall Rome be ruled by a king." The man stared at him, stunned. The idiot had vanished. In his place stood a liberator. Brutus marched through the streets of Rome with Lucrezia's corpse. He gathered the people, he shouted the crimes of the Tarquins from the rooftops. The rage of the people, already simmering, boiled over. The idiot, after all, was able to be there all the time. He knew everything there was to know about the royal family. You can also already see how Brutus is at the origin of a lot of Roman standards. This kind of pathos in how he confronted the crowd, the bringing of Lucrezia's body, the blood, in front of the audience. Doesn't it remind you of Mark Antony speaking at the funeral of Julius Caesar, or of the passionate orations of Cicero? With the people of Rome behind him, Brutus and Collatinus were named the First Consuls of Rome and overthrew the king. The monarchy, centuries old, collapsed in only days. Equal in power, these two worked together and created the office of consul itself. Yearly in office, the new republic had no crown, no throne, but two people capable of balancing each other out. The idiot who had kissed the dirt became the man who laid the foundations of Roman liberty. The monarchy had fallen, but its shadow still lingered. Rome was free in name but not in spirit. Fear still haunted the streets. Fear that the Tarquins would return, that their allies would undo everything, and that fear was not without cause. Many were the Etruscan cities, powerful both in economics and military, surrounding Rome. Tarquinius Superbus was not finished. He fled to his people, rallying kings and city-states who saw Rome's fledgling republic as a mistake to be corrected. War was coming, but war would be easy compared to what Brutus now faced: betrayal from within. Not long after becoming consul, Brutus uncovered a conspiracy. Letters smuggled by night whispered of a plot to restore the monarchy. The conspirators, a group of young Roman nobles. But this wasn't just treason, it was personal. Among the traitors were Titus and Tiberius, the sons of Brutus. As we said, Brutus was part of the royal family after all. He wasn't in the main line, but still a part of it. And so, to create this republic, to kick out the kings, was to take the birthright of his sons, and well, of many others. Livy tells us that the evidence was undeniable. A loyal slave, Vindicius, had intercepted the letters and turned them over to the authorities. The Senate debated. The people held their breath. After all, Brutus was the most powerful man in Rome, the most respected. If he wanted, he could have been king. He just needed to take it, just like the prophecy said. To save his sons, he just needed to say to let them go. And what did he do? He presided over the trial himself. The crowd wept. The city trembled. Brutus sat silent, his face carved from stone. Livy describes him as a stern judge, placing his country's law above the natural bonds of fatherhood. Dionysius adds that he showed no signs of grief, as his sons, as a consequence of the trial, were scourged and then beheaded before him. No execution in Roman history struck deeper. No legend was more symbolic. This wasn't just a father losing his sons, it was Rome choosing principle over blood. Brutus did not cry, he did not speak, he simply watched. Because for the Republic to live, his sons had to die. Afterwards, statues of Brutus were erected in the Forum. One showed him holding the rod of authority, another, hidden away in shame by future monarchs, depicted the execution, a reminder of what it had cost to be free. But the trials were not over. While Rome purged itself of treason, Tarquinius Superbus returned, this time at the head of an army. The exiled king had enlisted Lars Porsenna, the powerful Etruscan lord of Clusium. He was ready to crush the Republic, but before Porsenna marched, another confrontation came. The Battle of Silva Arsia, deep in the forest lands near Roman territory. There, Brutus met Arruns, another one of the king's sons, on the battlefield. The two men, cousins by blood, enemies by fate, saw each other across the battlefield. They spurred their horses and charged with fury. Neither dodged, neither flinched. Spears struck shield, and then flesh. And in a moment, both men were dead. Tarquinius was defeated, the king never returned. Brutus was given a hero's burial. The women of Rome mourned him for an entire year, a rare public ritual usually reserved for queens or priestesses. It was said that his statue, displayed in the Capitol, was never removed, even by emperors. And when tyrants did rise again, they looked upon the statue and remembered what the Roman people once called justice. Brutus became a legend, a symbol of incorruptible virtue. But legends don't end, they echo. Centuries later, when the Republic was dying once more, there was another Brutus around. But it is hard not to notice that while the first Brutus fought his opponent on the battlefield, the second one didn't end up doing things in such a noble way. Whenever a powerful man reached too far, whether Sulla, Marius, or Caesar, senators would whisper his name. "We need a Brutus." They said it quietly at first, then loudly. The Optimates, the conservative aristocrats who still worshipped the Mos Maiorum, invoked Brutus as the ideal Roman. So did the Stoics, who prized discipline and self-sacrifice. To them, Brutus was no murderer. He was Rome's executioner, dealing justice even when it hurts. The historian Dionysius of Halicarnassus, writing under Augustus, portrays Brutus, the first one, as the founder of lawful liberty, describing his death as noble and almost Christ-like. He died not only for his country, but for the future of all men who would live under free institutions. Even the coinage of the late Republic began to resurrect the name. In 54 BC, long before Caesar crossed the Rubicon, Marcus Junius Brutus, Caesar's Brutus, minted a coin showing his ancestor Lucius Brutus on one side and Gaius Servilius Ahala on the other, two tyrant killers, two ancient heroes of the Republic. This wasn't subtle, it was a message. We know what must be done. And Caesar noticed. In 44 BC, he had a moment of ominous theater. When the Senate tried to crown him with a diadem, Caesar refused, but not before declaring aloud, "I am not a king, but if I were, I would deserve it." And then he added with chilling irony, "Do you think Brutus would wait if it were time to kill kings?" This line has been preserved by Suetonius. It may have been in jest, it may have been political theater to convince people he didn't want to be king. See, Brutus isn't killing me after all. But it was dangerous. Brutus had tried. He loved Caesar, he admired him, but now senators and conspirators like Cassius and Cicero pressed him. If your ancestor killed the king for Rome, will you do no less? And well, think about it. He loved Caesar. Brutus loved his children. He had them beheaded, all the same. When the Ides of March came, the senators struck, and when Caesar saw Brutus among them, the sources diverge. Plutarch says he pulled his toga over his face and fell in silence. Suetonius writes that Caesar groaned, "Et tu, Brute, you too, Brutus?" But what matters most is what followed. Rome did not rise in celebration like it had done for the first Brutus. There were no cheers for the liberators. There were only riots, panic, mourning, and then war. The Republic had decayed too far. The memory of the first Brutus could no longer save it. And Caesar was loved, while Tarquinius was hated. Still, in his final moment, Marcus Junius Brutus believed. He believed he was living up to a sacred duty, passed down from a man who had sacrificed everything to give Romans a choice. When he fell on his sword at Philippi, he whispered to a friend, "Forget not how much more just it was to kill a tyrant than to die at his hands." Lucius Junius Brutus vanquished a king and built a republic. Marcus Junius Brutus killed a potential king and then watched the republic fall with him. 2 men, 1 name, and in between them 4 centuries of ideas, blood, ambition, and betrayal. And the haunting question: can a republic survive the men who claim to defend it? I hope you enjoyed this little addendum to our Eternal City story, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.